World War I, often called the Great War, was a global conflict that reshaped the political, social, and economic foundations of the modern world, unfolding between 1914 and 1918 as a result of decades of rising tensions among the world's major powers. Its roots lay deep in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, driven by a complex mix of militarism, alliances, imperial ambitions, nationalism, and economic rivalry. European nations had built massive armies and navies, glorifying military strength as a symbol of national power. While a rigid system of alliances divided Europe into two hostile camps, the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and the Triple Entente of Britain, France, and Russia. Imperial competition intensified rivalries as nations fought for colonies, resources, and global influence, while nationalism fueled ethnic tensions, particularly in the Balkans, where the decline of the Ottoman Empire created instability and competing territorial claims. The immediate spark came on June 28, 1914, when Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary and his wife were assassinated in Sarajevo by a Bosnian Serb nationalist linked to a Serbian-backed group, setting off a chain reaction of diplomatic ultimatums and mobilizations. Austria-Hungary, supported by Germany, declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized to defend Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia and France, and Britain entered the war after Germany invaded neutral Belgium, turning a regional crisis into a full-scale world war. The war quickly became a brutal test of industrialized warfare. On the Western Front, stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland, German forces advanced rapidly through Belgium and northern France, but were halted at the First Battle of the Marne in September 1914, leading to a deadly stalemate. Both sides dug extensive trench systems, creating a static front where soldiers endured horrific conditions, including mud, disease, lice, and constant shelling. Trench warfare dominated the Western Front, with massive offensives such as the battles of Verdun and the Somme in 1916 resulting in millions of casualties for minimal territorial gain. New weapons transformed warfare into an unprecedented slaughter, including machine guns, heavy artillery, poison gas, flamethrowers, tanks, and submarines. Poison gas, first used by Germany, caused terror and long-term suffering, while tanks were introduced to break trench deadlock. Though early versions were slow and unreliable, airplanes, initially used for reconnaissance, evolved into fighters and bombers, introducing aerial combat and strategic bombing. On the Eastern Front, fighting was more fluid due to vast distances and less developed infrastructure. Germany and Austria-Hungary faced Russia in a series of major battles, including the decisive German victory at Tannenberg in 1914, which shattered Russian armies. Despite occasional successes, Russia suffered from poor leadership, inadequate supplies, and widespread unrest at home. Meanwhile, the war expanded beyond Europe into a truly global conflict. In the Balkans, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, colonial troops and imperial forces fought for control of territories. The Ottoman Empire, allied with Germany, entered the war in late 1914, opening new fronts in the Caucasus, Gallipoli, and the Arab lands. The Gallipoli Campaign of 1915, led by Britain and France with significant Australian and New Zealand forces, aimed to knock the Ottomans out of the war, but ended in costly failure. In the Middle East, Arab revolts against Ottoman rule, supported by British officers such as T.E. Lawrence, weakened Ottoman control, while fighting in Mesopotamia and Palestine reshaped the region. In Africa, battles between European colonial forces disrupted local societies and economies, while Japan seized German possessions in the Pacific and China, expanding its influence. As the war dragged on, entire societies were mobilized for total war. Governments took control of industries, directed production, rationed food, and used propaganda to maintain public support. Civilians became targets through blockades and bombings, blurring the line between battlefield and home front. Britain's naval blockade of Germany caused severe shortages of food and raw materials, contributing to civilian suffering and unrest. In response, Germany used unrestricted submarine warfare, sinking merchant ships, including those of neutral nations, to break the blockade. His policy played a crucial role in drawing the United States into the war. Initially neutral, the United States had economic and cultural ties to the Allies and was outraged by German submarine attacks, particularly the sinking of the passenger liner Lusitania in 1915. In 1917, Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare and attempted to lure Mexico into war against the U.S. through the Zimmermann telegram, prompting President Woodrow Wilson to declare war on Germany in April 1917, framing the conflict as a fight to make the world safe for democracy. Meanwhile, internal collapse transformed the Eastern Front. Russia, exhausted by military defeats, economic hardship, and political instability, experienced the February Revolution of 1917, which overthrew the Tsar. Later that year, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power in the October Revolution, promising peace, land, and bread. In March 1918, the new Soviet government signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany, withdrawing Russia from the war at the cost of significant territory. This allowed Germany to shift troops to the Western Front for a final offensive. In the spring of 1918, Germany launched a series of massive attacks in an attempt to win the war before American forces could fully arrive. Initially successful, these offensives ultimately failed due to exhausted troops, logistical problems, and growing Allied resistance strengthened by fresh American soldiers. The tide turned decisively in favor of the Allies during the 100 Days Offensive, beginning in August 1918, as coordinated attacks using combined arms tactics pushed German forces back. American troops played a key role in battles such as the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, one of the largest and deadliest operations in U.S. military history. At the same time, Germany's allies collapsed one by one. Bulgaria surrendered in September 1918, the Ottoman Empire signed an armistice in October, and Austria-Hungary, torn apart by nationalist movements among its diverse population, dissolved and sought peace. Facing military defeat, economic collapse, and revolution at home, Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated on November 9, 1918, and a new government sought an armistice. Fighting officially ended on November 11, 1918, when the armistice was signed, bringing an end to one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. The aftermath of World War I was as transformative as the war itself. Approximately 16 to 20 million people were killed, including soldiers and civilians, and millions more were wounded or traumatized. Entire regions of Europe were devastated, economies were shattered, and societies struggled to cope with loss and disillusionment. The war led to the collapse of four major empires: the German, Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, and Russian empires. New nations emerged in Central and Eastern Europe, including Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia, often with borders that ignored ethnic realities and sowed the seeds of future conflict. In 1919, the victorious Allies met at the Paris Peace Conference to shape the post-war world. The most famous outcome was the Treaty of Versailles, which imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including territorial losses, military restrictions, war guilt, and massive reparations. While intended to ensure peace, the treaty fueled resentment, economic hardship, and political instability in Germany. World War I also had profound global consequences beyond Europe. The United States emerged as a major world power, while European dominance weakened. The Russian Revolution led to the creation of the Soviet Union, shaping global politics for much of the 20th century. The Middle East was reshaped by secret agreements and mandates that ignored local aspirations, laying the groundwork for long-term instability. Socially, the war transformed attitudes toward authority, nationalism, and war itself. The immense scale of death and destruction shattered the romantic notion of war, inspiring pacifist movements, war memorials, and a generation of writers and artists who expressed disillusionment with traditional values. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, accelerating demands for greater rights and suffrage in many countries. Technologically and militarily, the war revolutionized combat and state power, demonstrating the destructive potential of industrialized warfare. Ultimately, World War I was not just a military conflict, but a turning point in human history, a catastrophic struggle born from ambition, fear, and miscalculation that reshaped nations, ideologies, and the global order, leaving a legacy that continues to influence the world to this day.